Welcome everyone to this week's Torah portion review. This week we have a double portion. These are the last two portions of the book of Bamidbar, or the book of Numbers. This portion opens with the topic of vows. So Rabbi Moshe Wiseman in his series The Little Midrash says he opts for the word promises. Basically, the Torah warns everyone to be very, very careful with their promises. Rabbi Weissman gives an example. He says, imagine you make a promise never to eat cake again. And then the next day you go to a party and they're serving the most tempting, the most delicious cake you've ever seen. Well, what do you do then? If you break your promise, then as the Torah teaches, that is a sin. You have to keep your word. Well, the rabbis explain that there are a few ways to get your promises canceled. There are scenarios where maybe your promise can't be kept, so you have to find a way to cancel it. But they're sort of complicated. You have to go to the Beit Din in one instance, which is a Jewish court, and you have to explain the situation, and they're basically the ones that are responsible for declaring if your promise is canceled or not. And the rabbis explain that promises are only valid to people that are of bar mitzvah age, which is around 12 to 13, but that doesn't mean that people younger than that should be making promises. If anything, they recommend children to be trained not to make promises. The Midrash also emphasizes avoiding unnecessary promises. So if you make unnecessary promises, for example, if you just say, "Oh, I promise I'll be out in 10 minutes," even if you do keep your word, you're not treating it as seriously as it should be kept. So all of this is to emphasize the nature of the Jewish understanding of how serious words are, how much more so when you bring God into your speech. So, of course, it should be holy, it should be wise, it should be safe. The next chapter details the battles against Midian. Remember, Midian was the country that tried cursing Israel with the help of Bilam. But hold on a second. The Midrash notices that technically, back in Parsha Pinchas, it was Midian and Moab against the people of Israel. But now that it's time to get revenge, how come God says to only fight against Midian? Where did Moab go? Well, two reasons. The Moabites technically had a reason to fight. The Moabites were scared that the Israelites would come and take all their stuff and force them out of their country. But the Midianites, however, had no reason at all to fight Israel. They just wanted to destroy them solely because, as the rabbis teach, that they just hated them. And then another reason is that Hashem saw someone important being born in Moab in the future, and her name was Ruth, a very righteous woman. Ruth was the great grandmother of King David, and later on from this same lineage would come King Messiah. So Ruth was actually not from the Israelites. She was born in Moab. She married into the Israelites, had a child with a man named Boaz, who was from the tribe of Judah, and because of this, Hashem foresaw all this. He did not order the fight against Moab. So God had commanded only 12,000 people to go fight. This was 1,000 men from each tribe. And the person leading them in the battle was Pinchas. And they killed every Midianite man. They killed even the 5 kings of Midian. And in this battle, we also see the death of Bilam. Remember, Bilam, the famous magician, the man responsible for the grave sin of the Israelites not too long ago, he was also killed too. So justice was served in this chapter. In chapter 32, the tribes of Reuben and Gad, they come up to Moses to ask if they can stay on the east side of the Jordan. So you see the Jordan is right here, this river in the middle. And Reuben and Gad were like, can we stay on the east side of the Jordan? And Moses almost crashed out. He was not happy with this request since he thought they were chickening out of the plan. Right? We're about to go conquer the land, and you guys want to stay back? Moses reminded them of everything that God had done for the people, and he scolded these tribes because he thought that they wanted to stay on the east side. He thought that would be a form of disheartening for the rest of the people. That would be, everybody else would be unmotivated, and they're like, well, if they get to stay outside the land, then how come we don't? Like, we can too. I don't want to go fight. Maybe this would make everyone else scared or unsure about going out to fight. So quickly, Reuben and Gad were like, whoa, 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 Moses, hold on. You got the wrong idea. Okay, we want to stay on this side of the river, but that doesn't mean we don't want to go out to fight. We'll go out to fight, and even more so, we'll be among the first to go out. But once everything is over, once we get all the land, we just want to stay on this side of the land because of all the animals and territory we need for this livestock. And the Midrash has mixed feelings about this, since technically they would be giving up their holy portions of the land, because the east side of the Jordan River did not have that same holiness. Remember, the land of the promised land, the land of Canaan, was right here, everything on the right side of or the west of the Jordan, but they wanted to stay outside of it. So, indeed, because they were kind of separated, the rabbis say that they were among the first tribes to be exiled. So by the end of this chapter, we see that Moses conceded, and the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and even half the tribe of Manasseh. So we're going to add right here, Manasseh. We're going to add just half. So Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh were able to stay, or were allowed to stay on the east side of the Jordan River, but only after the land was conquered. This chapter, which starts the last portion of the book of Numbers, lists all the 42 places where Israel stayed in their 40-year-long journey in the wilderness. Now, the rabbis explained that one reason for this is to explain how each place was supposed to be immortalized in writing for the events that happened there. For example, every time somebody in the future would pass by Dafka, the city of Dafka, they would tell their children or people around, they would say, look, in this city in Dafka, Hashem made manna fall from heaven. Hashem provided them with food every single day. And in that same way, people would also warn about how in some of these places bad things happened. Again, the example would be, imagine a father telling their children that here in this city of Ritma, the spies spoke bad things about the land of Israel. So this chapter is really like zooming out of a GPS after, imagine you just traveled, well, I don't even know how to compare 40-year travel. Imagine you just were in a car for 8 hours and you just zoomed out to see all the road you just covered, all the gas stations you passed by, all the McDonald's you passed by. Well, all the cities, all the roads, and throughout everything, Hashem protected Israel the entire time. Now, chapter 34 details the borders of Israel. Again, Moses gave the very, very specific orders regarding how far the promised land stretches to. Now, this map on screen is actually a future map, not in the time of Moses, but it was once the tribes actually got the portions of the land after Joshua conquered it. But in Moses' time, he just basically gave them the general outline of how far the land would extend it to. So this chapter is a quick reminder to the people that they have to be conscious and remember about what parts of the land they'll conquer, and later on they'll need to remember the rules about how to conquer the land. The Midrash makes an important emphasis here on how Hashem commands Moses to tell the people that once they start to conquer the land, they cannot let anyone stay there. Okay, everyone who lived on the land were supposed to be driven out, move away. Why? Because if the other nations stayed on the Holy Land, then the Israelites would be easily influenced and they would start to turn away from God. So heavy emphasis, remember this. This is a heavy, heavy theme throughout the entire book, the next book of Deuteronomy. Do not let anyone live amongst you. You have to drive them out of the land. And in chapter 35, remember that 12 tribes of Israel got portions of the land, but the Levites did not get specific portions of the land. Instead, Hashem gave the Levites many cities throughout the land in different territories, and they had 48 cities to be exact. And of these 48 cities, 6 of them were chosen to be a city of refuge. Now, what is a city of refuge? Well, imagine this situation. If a Jew killed another, he escaped to a city of refuge. And once he escaped to this city, and there's 6 of them here, the flagged cities are the cities of refuge. So you can see that 3 of them are in the promised land, 3 of them are on the east side of the Jordan, technically in the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. So if somebody killed someone, he would go to a city of refuge, and once he was there, he would wait until the Sanhedrin, which is the main Jewish court, decided if he killed the person on purpose or if it was on accident. Again, it was possible. Was the murder on purpose or was the murder just an accident? And if the murder was on purpose, then the Jew would be put to death. However, if the judges decided that it was an accident, then he could safely stay in that city. That was safe ground for him. So no one was allowed to come and take revenge on him, or else they would get in trouble for it. And in this discussion, the rabbis make heavy emphasis on the seriousness of murder. Of all the sins of the Torah, the murder is the worst, because most sins that people do against each other, well, maybe it's possible they can be corrected, right? If someone is mean or insults another person, then he can apologize. If he stole something, then maybe he can give it back or pay for it. But how can someone possibly correct the sin of murder? And this is also even more terrible when you realize how people who are murdered are not allowed to have any children. So in this Jewish thought, it says their bloodline stops there. No more souls are being brought into this world, and that is a tragedy. Now, in the final chapter of the book of Numbers, the Torah brings about a conclusion to the story of Zelophehad's daughters. Now, remember, we already learned about this man's 5 daughters who came up to Moses and asked them about their right to inherit the land. Well, the Torah informs us that these daughters from the tribe of Manasseh were told that in order to rightfully inherit the land, they just had to marry within the same tribe of Manasseh. They couldn't marry people from outside the tribes. Well, these daughters, remember Machla, Charla, Noah, Milka, and Tirza, they all followed with the advice. With this, the book of Bamidbar comes to a close. And a rabbi I've been watching recently, he's had this opinion for a while that this is the end of the Torah. Because after this, there really is no more action or story. When we start the book of Deuteronomy, we're going to see how Deuteronomy is basically a 37-day long speech before Moses dies. There's not really any more fights, no more arguments, not much dialogue. The entire book of Deuteronomy is just a long speech that basically reviews the entire Torah. So the book of Bamidbar teaches us a lot about Israel's history in the wilderness. And when we read it now, we can also use these stories and lessons to learn how to take advantage and live in the modern day wilderness. Right? You see how the same way that the people of Israel were not yet in the promised land, but they were being guided there. Well, so too believers are not quite where they want to be, but they're supposed to trust in the process that God is leading them to where they have to be. And just like in the book of Numbers, this requires you to do your part, to have faith in the God who has done great things. At the end of each book of the Torah, when it is read in the synagogue, the last verse is read and everyone chants Chazak, Chazak, Venit Chazek, which means be strong, and let us be strengthened. This is chanted at the end of every single book of the Torah. And with this, we've concluded the book of Numbers. May we continue studying these texts with the most care, the most passion possible. So thank you so much for having watched this series, this review of the book of the Torah, the book of Numbers. May we continue studying, of course. Shalom, shalom, and Shavuot Tov to all. Have a great week, everyone.